What is up? Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day. Back here with some more Resident Evil content for you. And today I'm going to be talking about one of the things I deeply despise and absolutely hate that happens in the Resident Evil franchise. Now there are things that do bug me and annoy me, but this one thing really does bug me more than most. And the thing was, it wasn't a thing when Resident Evil first launched during the whole PS1 era. But unfortunately, with Resident Evil 4, it started this whole trend. And no, I'm not talking about the whole transition from survival horror to more action-based horror. No. Something else that has continued since Resident Evil 4 and has stayed there ever since. What is this, you may ask? Well, let's start from the beginning. When Resident Evil first launched, you had Resident Evil 1. Then you had Resident Evil 2, then you had Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, and then you have Resident Evil Code Veronica. What's unique, especially about all four of these games, they all took place within a year of each other. Not talking about when they released, but in the timeline, they all took place in the same year. Some of it a few days of each other. My point being, you had four major Resident Evil titles that all took place within a year. Who would ever thought that that would be the last time that basically would ever happen in a Resident Evil franchise? Because ever since Resident Evil 4 released, it's been the exact opposite. So Resident Evil 4 takes place 6 years after Code Veronica. And I'm just going to stick with the mainline Resident Evil titles here. So I'm not going to go on the spin-offs or the non-canon entries. But point is, Resident Evil 4 took place 6 years after Code Veronica. Now, maybe this is just one of those weird anomalies, but no, it started another trend. Because ever since that point, every major Resident Evil title has taken place many, many years after the previous one. With Resident Evil 5 taking place, I believe, 3 years after 4. I know technically the prologue is a few years after, but it still takes place 5 years, I think, from 2004 to 2009. And if I do get one of the years wrong, please let me know. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. Resident Evil 6 takes place in 2012 and 2013. A little bit of both years because they do have a little bit of jump between them. But you get the point. It takes place about 3 or 4 years after Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 7 takes place in 2017. So about 4 to 5 years after Resident Evil 6. And then Resident Evil Village takes place in 2021. Once again, since Resident Evil 4, you have multi-year gaps. And not like 1 or 2 years, but like 3 at the lowest, and then 4 and 5 at the highest. And basically, well, 6 at the highest technically if you go Resident Evil 4. But you get the point. You have these multi-year big gaps between major Resident Evil games. So you might be asking yourself, well, what's the problem? What's the big deal about it? What does it matter? Well, it matters a lot because here's the thing. If anyone knows anything about Resident Evil and its characters, is that they're not getting any younger. They are at that point where a lot of people have gotten to the point where it's like, how are these people still doing this stuff? How are they still look the way they do at the age you're at? Like, something's not making sense here. Now, granted, to be fair, Resident Evil's never really made sense and never cared about making sense, but yeah, you got characters that are pushing over 50 now in the Resident Evil universe, and it didn't have to be that way. You could have had them still maybe in their early 40s or late 30s at this point if you just did the whole timeline so much better. Like, why is there such huge gaps between major entries? Why is it that the first 4 were all done within a year, and then, like, the next 4 or 5 mainline entries are all like 6 years, 3 years, 4 years, 4 years, 5 years. Like, why these big gaps? It doesn't make any sense. Like, so, and you think in those years, a lot of instances have to be happening, and they do talk about a few things, but in terms of just happening in mainline games, why do you have to have the big gaps? Why have these characters basically pushing 50 when you could have had them in their at least late 30s, early 40s to a degree where you could at least expect them to still do this? Yeah, you could still get away with doing it at their current age in a way, but it's kind of at that point now where this has got to be close to their last, if not overall last adventure. And it didn't have to be this way if they were just smarter about it, but unfortunately Capcom just we didn't think about it, or maybe just think it wasn't going to be a big deal. But this whole age discussion has been getting heavier and heavier ever since Death Island came out. A lot of people have been asking, hey, why these characters don't look like the age they are, especially when it comes to Jill. It looks like she's going to be ageless because of the virus, but you get the point. But I mean, here's how I look at it. Like, take a character like AdaWong, for example. AdaWong debuted in Resident Evil 2. Their next adventure you see her in, mainline, would be Resident Evil 4. That takes place a 6-year gap. So she had a 6-year gap where you not see her at all. Then, and I'm not going to count the CGI movies, just sticking with the games, then her next appearance would be 9 years later well, technically 8 to 9 years later in Resident Evil 6. That's a huge gap. That's like 14 years in which she's had, 2 or 3 adventures, but once again, it could have been so many more if you just did the whole timing and the timeline so much better. But instead, you decide to have these huge, huge gaps to now, if these characters were to appear in the latest new Resident Evil, Resident Evil 9, just about all of them are pushing or just right at 50 years old. It didn't have to be like that. I mean, Capcom, I've maybe been critical of some of your storytelling skills and abilities, but this has nothing to do with that. This is a simple common sense. Like, why do you have these huge gaps? I mean, I know you think these characters are really important, especially to fans and the franchise, but they're not going to be around for too much longer if you keep pushing the whole years, and it's probably too little too late if we're being honest, but with the way you're going, at the rate you're going, if they don't appear in Resident Evil 9, then Resident Evil 10 or 11, I don't want to imagine seeing geriatric Chris or geriatric Grandpa Leon need help, and Granny AdaWong comes in there and has to save the day, and I'm wondering if these people are going to make it into the nursing home in time before they get passed out or run out of stamina or whatever the case may be. I don't even want to imagine, even as a joke, because that would just be sad. But knowing Capcom, they'll still find some BS way to be like, well, they're older, but we're not going to age them or make them look like they're that age. We'll have some way to keep their youth like they're, I don't know, Tagoro from Yu Hakusho or something like that. But you get the drift. But yeah, I've never been a big fan of these huge gaps between major titles. I don't know why they do that. But at the end of the day, as I always like to say, that is my opinion. I want to hear your guys' opinion. What do you feel about these huge gaps between Resident Evil games ever since Resident Evil 4 came out? Do you like these huge gaps? Do you think they should be cut down shorter? Just from the standpoint that these characters are getting older, they're not getting any younger, and I don't want to have the fear of them possibly doing Grandpa Leon and Grandma Ada in Resident Evil 10 or whatever the case may be. But that is going to be it. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video, and hopefully I can see you guys back on the next one. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you all later. Peace.